There are people who believe that the Golden Rule philosophy is nothing more than a theory, and that it is in no way connected with an immutable law. They have arrived at this conclusion because of personal experience wherein they rendered service to others without enjoying the benefits of direct reciprocation. How many are there who have not rendered service to others that was neither reciprocated nor appreciated? I am sure that I have had such an experience, not once, but many times, and I am equally sure that I will have similar experiences in the future. Nor will I discontinue rendering service to others merely because they neither reciprocate nor appreciate my efforts. And here is the reason. When I render service to another or indulge in an act of kindness, I store away in my subconscious mind the effect of my efforts, which may be likened to the charging of an electric battery. By and by, if I indulge in a sufficient number of such acts, I will have developed a positive, dynamic character that will attract to me people who harmonize with or resemble my own character. Those whom I attract to me will reciprocate the acts of kindness and the service that I have rendered others. Thus the law of compensation will have balanced the scales of justice for me, bringing back from one source the results of service that I rendered through an entirely different source. You have often heard it said that a salesman's first sale should be to himself, which means that unless he first convinces himself of the merits of his wares, he will not be able to convince others. Here, again, enters this same law of attraction, for it is a well-known fact that enthusiasm is contagious, and when a salesman shows great enthusiasm over his wares, he will arouse a corresponding interest in the minds of others. You can comprehend this law quite easily by regarding yourself as a sort of human magnet that attracts those whose characters harmonize with your own. And thus regarding yourself as a magnet that attracts to you all who harmonize with your dominating characteristics and repels all who do not so harmonize, you should keep in mind, also, the fact that you are the builder of that magnet, also, that U35 may change its nature so that it will correspond to any ideal that you may wish to set up and follow. And, most important of all, you should keep in mind the fact that this entire process of change takes place through thought. Your character is but the sum total of your thoughts and deeds. This truth has been stated in many different ways throughout this course. Because of this great truth, it is impossible for you to render any useful service or indulge in any act of kindness toward others without benefiting thereby. Moreover, it is just as impossible for you to indulge in any destructive act or thought without paying the penalty and the loss of a corresponding amount of your own power. Positive thought develops a dynamic personality. Negative thought develops a personality of an opposite nature. In many of the preceding lessons of this course, and in this one, definite instructions are given as to the exact method of developing personality through positive thought. These instructions are particularly detailed in Lesson 3 on self-confidence. In that lesson, you have a very definite formula to follow. All of the formulas provided in...
Hi, my name's Dart. I'm the person behind these videos. Please like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for the playlist so you can hear this book in its entirety. Now back to the book.
This course are for the purpose of helping you consciously to direct the power of thought in the development of a personality that will attract to you those who will be of help in the attainment of your definite chief aim. You need no proof that your hostile or unkind acts toward others bring back the effects of retaliation. Moreover, this retaliation is usually 36, definite and immediate. Likewise, you need no proof that you can accomplish more by dealing with others in such a way that they will want to cooperate with you. If you master the 8th lesson on self-control, you now understand how to induce others to act toward you as you wish them to act, through your own attitude toward them. The law of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is based upon the self-same law as that upon which the Golden Rule operates. This is nothing more than the law of retaliation with which all of us are familiar. Even the most selfish person will respond to this law, because he cannot help it. If I speak ill of you, even though I tell the truth, you will not think kindly of me. Furthermore, you will most likely retaliate in kind. But if I speak of your virtues, you will think kindly of me. And when the opportunity appears, you will reciprocate in kind in the majority of instances. Through the operation of this law of attraction, the uninformed are constantly attracting trouble and grief and hatred and opposition from others by their unguarded words and destructive acts. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We have heard that injunction expressed thousands of times, yet how many of us understand the law upon which it is based? To make this injunction somewhat clearer, it might be well to state it more in detail, about as follows. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, bearing in mind the fact that human nature has a tendency to retaliate in kind. Confucius must have had in mind the law of retaliation when he stated the Golden Rule philosophy in about this way. Do not unto others that which you would not have them do unto you. And he might well have added an explanation to the effect that the reason for his injunction was based upon the common tendency of man to retaliate in kind. Those who do not understand the law upon which the golden rule is based are inclined to argue that it will not work, for the reason that men are inclined toward the principle of exacting an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which is nothing more nor less than the law of retaliation. If they would go a step further in their reasoning, they would understand that they are looking at the negative effects of this law, and that the self-same law is capable of producing positive effects as well. In other words, if you would not have your own eye plucked out, then insure against this misfortune by refraining from plucking out the other fellow's eye. Go a step further and render the other fellow an act of kindly, helpful service, and through the operation of this same law of retaliation he will render you a similar service. And, if he should fail to reciprocate your kindness, what then? You have profited, nevertheless, because of the effect of your act on your own subconscious mind. Thus, by indulging in acts of kindness and applying, always, the golden rule philosophy, you are sure of benefit from one source, and at the same time you have a pretty fair chance of profiting from another source. It might happen that you would base all of your acts toward others on the golden rule without enjoying any direct reciprocation for a long period of time, and it might so happen that those to whom you rendered those acts of kindness would never reciprocate. But meantime, you have been adding vitality to your own character, and sooner or later this positive character which you have been building will begin to assert itself, and you will discover that you have been receiving compound interest on compound interest in return for those acts of kindness which appeared to have been wasted on those who neither appreciated nor reciprocated them. Remember that your reputation is made by others, but your character is made by you. You want your reputation to be a favorable one, but you cannot be sure that it will be for the reason that it is something that exists outside of your own control, in the minds of others. It is what others believe you to be. With your character, it is different. Your character is that which you are, as the results of your thoughts and deeds. You control it. You can make it weak, good, or bad. When you are satisfied and know in your mind that your character is above reproach, you need not worry about your reputation. For it is as impossible for your character to be destroyed or damaged by anyone except yourself as it is to destroy matter or energy. It was this truth that Emerson had in mind when he said, "A political victory, a rise of rents, the recovery of your sick or the return of your absent friend, or some other quite external event raises your spirits, and you think your days are prepared for you. Do not believe it. It can never be so. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles. One reason for being just toward others is the fact that such action may cause them to reciprocate in kind, but a better reason is the fact that kindness and justice toward others develop positive character in all who indulge in these acts. You may withhold from me the reward to which I am entitled for rendering you helpful service, but no one can deprive me of the benefit I will derive from the rendering of that service in so far as it adds to my own character. We are living in a great industrial age. Everywhere we see the evolutionary forces working great changes in the method and manner of living, and rearranging the relationships between men in the ordinary pursuit of life, liberty, and a living. This is an age of organized effort. On every hand we see evidence that organization is the basis of all financial success, and while other factors than that of organization enter into the attainment of success, this factor is still one of major importance. This industrial age has created two comparatively new terms. One is called capital and the other labor. Capital and labor constitute the main wheels in the machinery of organized effort. These two great forces enjoy success in exact ratio to the extent that both understand and apply the golden rule philosophy. Despite this fact, however, harmony between these two forces does not always prevail, thanks to the destroyers of confidence who make a living by sowing the seed of dissension and stirring up strife between employers and employees. During the past 15 years, I have devoted considerable time to the study of the causes of disagreement between employers and employees. Also, I have gathered much information on this subject from other men who, likewise, have been studying this problem. There is but one solution which will, if understood by all concerned, bring harmony out of chaos and establish a perfect working relationship between capital and labor. The remedy is no invention of mine. It is based upon a great universal law of nature. This remedy has been well stated by one of the great men of this generation in the following words: "The question we propose to consider is exciting deep interest at the present time, but no more than its importance demands. It is one of the hopeful signs of the times that these subjects of vital interest to human happiness are constantly coming up for a bearing, are engaging the attention of the wisest men, and stirring the minds of all classes of people. The wide prevalence of this movement shows that a new life is beating in the heart of humanity, operating upon their faculties like the warm breath of spring upon the frozen ground and the dormant germs of the plant. It will make a great stir. It will break up many frozen and dead forms. It will produce great and, in some cases, it may be, destructive changes, but it announces the blossoming of new hopes and the coming of new harvests for the supply of human wants and the means of greater happiness. There is great need of wisdom to guide the new forces coming into action. Every man is under the most solemn obligation to do his part in forming a correct public opinion and giving wise direction to popular will. The only solution for the problems of labor, of want, of abundance, of suffering and sorrow can only be found by regarding them from a moral and spiritual point of view. They must be seen and examined in a light that is not of themselves. The true relations of labor and capital can never be discovered by human selfishness. They must be viewed from a higher purpose than wages or the accumulation of wealth. They must be regarded from their bearing upon the purposes for which man was created. It is from this point of view I propose to consider the subject before us. Capital and labor are essential to each other. Their interests are so bound together that they cannot be separated. In civilized and enlightened communities, they are mutually dependent. If there is any difference, capital is more dependent upon labor than labor upon capital. Life can be sustained without capital. Animals, with a few exceptions, have no property and take no anxious thought for the morrow, and our Lord commends them to our notice as examples worthy of imitation. Behold the fowls of the air, he says, for they sow not, neither do they reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. The savages live without capital. Indeed, the great mass of human beings live by their labor from day to day, from hand to mouth. But no man can live upon his wealth. He cannot eat his gold and silver. He cannot clothe himself with deeds and certificates of stock. Capital can do nothing without labor, and its only value consists in its power to purchase labor or its results. It is itself the product of labor. It has no occasion, therefore, to assume an importance that does not belong to it. Absolutely dependent, however, as it is upon labor for its value, it is an essential factor in human progress. The moment man begins to rise from a savage and comparatively independent state to a civilized and dependent one, capital becomes necessary. Men come into more intimate relations with one another. Instead of each one doing everything, men begin to devote themselves to special employments and to depend upon others to provide many things for them while they engage in some special occupation. In this way, labor becomes diversified. One man works in iron, another in wood, one manufactures cloth, another makes it into garments. Some raise food to feed those who build houses and manufacture implements of husbandry. This necessitates a system of exchanges, and to facilitate exchanges roads must be made, and men must be employed to make them. As population increases and necessities multiply, the business of exchange becomes enlarged, until we have immense manufactories, railroads girding the earth with iron bins, steamships plowing every sea, and a multitude of men who cannot raise bread or make a garment, or do anything directly for the supply of their own wants. Now, we can see how we become more dependent upon others as our wants are multiplied and civilization advances. Each one works in his special employment, does better work, because he can devote his whole thought and time to a form of use for which he is specially fitted, and contributes more largely to the public good. While he is working for others, all others are working for him. Every member of the community is working for the whole body, and the whole body for every member. This is the law of perfect life, a law which rules everywhere in the material body. Every man who is engaged in any employment useful to body or mind is a philanthropist, a public benefactor, whether he raises corn on the prairie, cotton in Texas or India, mines coal in the chambers of the earth, or feeds it to engines in the hold of a steamship. If selfishness did not pervert and blast human motives, all men and women would be fulfilling the law of charity while engaged in their daily employment. To carry on this vast system of exchanges, to place the forest and the farm, the factory and the mine side by side, and deliver the products of all climes at every door, requires immense capital. One man cannot work his farm or factory and build a railroad or a line of steamships. As raindrops acting singly cannot drive a mill or supply steam for an engine, but collected in a vast reservoir, become the resistless power of Niagara, or the force which drives the engine and steamship like mighty shuttles from mountain to seacoast and from shore to shore, so a few dollars in a multitude of pockets are powerless to provide the means for these vast operations, but combined they move the world. Capital is a friend of labor and essential to its economical exercise and just reward. It can be, and often is, a terrible enemy when employed for selfish purposes alone, but the great mass of it is more friendly to human happiness than is generally supposed. It cannot be employed without in some way, either directly or indirectly, helping the laborer. We think of the evils we suffer, but allow the good we enjoy to pass unnoticed. We think of the evils that larger means would relieve and the comforts they would provide, but overlook the blessings we enjoy that would have been impossible without large accumulations of capital. It is the part of wisdom to form a just estimate of the good we receive as well as the evils we suffer. It is a common saying at the present time that the rich are growing richer and the poor poorer, but when all man's possessions are taken into the account, there are good reasons for doubting this assertion. It is true that the rich are growing richer. It is also true that the condition of the laborer is constantly improving. The common laborer has conveniences and comforts which princes could not command a century ago. He is better clothed, has a greater variety and abundance of food, lives in a more comfortable dwelling, and has many more conveniences for the conduct of domestic affairs and the prosecution of labor than money could purchase but a few years ago. An emperor could not travel with the ease, the comfort, and the swiftness that the common laborer can today. He may think that he stands alone, with no one to help. But, in truth, he has an immense retinue of servants constantly waiting upon him, ready and anxious to do his bidding. It requires a vast army of men and an immense outlay of capital to provide a common dinner, such as every man and woman, with few exceptions, has enjoyed today. Think of the vast combination of means and men and forces necessary to provide even a frugal meal. The Chinaman raises your tea, the Brazilian your coffee, the East Indian your spices, the Cuban your sugar, the farmer upon the western prairies your bread and possibly your beef, the gardener your vegetables, the dairyman your butter and milk. The miner has dug from the hills the coal with which your food was cooked and your house was warmed. The cabinet maker has provided you with chairs and tables, the cutler with knives and forks, the potter with dishes, the Irishman has made your table cloth, the butcher has dressed your meat, the miller your flour. But these various articles of food, and the means of preparing and serving them, were produced at immense distances from you and from one another. Oceans had to be traversed, hills leveled, valleys filled, and mountains tunneled, ships must be built, railways constructed, and a vast army of men instructed and employed in every mechanical art before the materials for your dinner could be prepared and served. There must also be men to collect these materials, to buy and sell and distribute them. Everyone stands in his own place and does his own work, and receives his wages. But he is nonetheless working for you, and serving you as truly and effectively as he would be if he were in your special employment and received his wages from your hand. In the light of these facts, which everyone must acknowledge, we may be able to see more clearly the truth that every man and woman who does useful work is a public benefactor, and the thought of it and the purpose of it will ennoble the labor and the laborer. We are all bound together by common ties. The rich and the poor, the learned and the ignorant, the strong and the weak, are woven together in one social and civic web. Harm to one is harm to all. Help to one is help to all. You see what a vast army of servants it requires to provide your dinner. Do you not see that it demands a corresponding amount of capital to provide and keep this complicated machinery in motion? And do you not see that every man, woman, and child is enjoying the benefit of it? How could we get our coal, our meat, our flour, our tea and coffee, sugar and rice? The laborer cannot build ships and sail them and support himself while doing it. The farmer cannot leave his farm and take his produce to the market. The miner cannot mine and transport his coal. The farmer in Kansas may be burning corn today to cook his food and warm his dwelling, and the miner may be hungry for the bread which the corn would supply, because they cannot exchange the fruits of their labor. Every acre of land, every forest and mine has been increased in value by railways and steamboats, and the comforts of life and the means of social and intellectual culture have been carried to the most inaccessible places. But the benefits of capital are not limited to supplying present wants and comforts. It opens new avenues for labor. It diversifies it and gives a wider field to everyone to do the kind of work for which he is best fitted by natural taste and genius. The number of employments created by railways, steamships, telegraph, and manufactories by machinery can hardly be estimated. Capital is also largely invested in supplying the means of intellectual and spiritual culture. Books are multiplied at constantly diminishing prices, and the best thought of the world, by means of our great publishing houses, is made accessible to the humblest workman. There is no better example of the benefits the common laborer derives from capital than the daily newspaper. For 2 or 3 cents, the history of the world for 24 hours is brought to every door. The laborer, while riding to or from his work in a comfortable car, can visit all parts of the known world and get a truer idea of the events of the day than he could if he were bodily present. A battle in China or Africa, an earthquake in Spain, a dynamite explosion in London, a debate in Congress, the movements of men in public and private life for the suppression of vice, for enlightening the ignorant, helping the needy, and improving the people generally, are spread before him in a small compass and bring him into contact and on equality in regard to the world's history, with kings and queens, with saints and sages, and people in every condition in life. Do you ever think, while reading the morning paper, how many men have been running on your errands, collecting intelligence for you from all parts of the earth, and putting it into a form convenient for your use? It required the investment of millions of money and the employment of thousands of men to produce that paper and leave it at your door. And what did all this service cost you? A few cents. These are examples of the benefits which everyone derives from capital, benefits which could not be obtained without vast expenditures of money, benefits which come to us without our care and lay their blessings at our feet. Capital cannot be invested in any useful production without blessing a multitude of people. It sets the machinery of life in motion, it multiplies employment, it places the product of all climes at every door, it draws the people of all nations together, brings mind in contact with mind, and gives to every man and woman a large and valuable share of the product. These are facts which it would be well for everyone, however poor he may be, to consider. If capital is such a blessing to labor, if it can only be brought into use by labor and derives all its value from it, how can there be any conflict between them? There could be none if both the capitalist and laborer acted from humane and Christian principles. But they do not. They are governed by inhuman and unchristian principles. Each party seeks to get the largest returns for the least service. Capital desires larger profits, labor higher wages. The interests of the capitalist and the laborer come into direct collision. In this warfare, capital has great advantages and has been prompt to take them. It has demanded and taken the lion's share of the profits. It has despised the servant that enriched it. It has regarded the laborer as a menial, a slave, whose rights and happiness it was not bound to respect. It influences legislators to enact laws in its favor, subsidizes governments, and wields its power for its own advantage. Capital has been a lord and labor a servant. While the servant remained docile and obedient, content with such compensation as its lord chose to give, there was no conflict. But labor is rising from a servile, submissive, and hopeless condition. It has acquired strength and intelligence, has gained the idea that it is rights that ought to be respected, and begins to assert and combine to support them. Each party in this warfare regards the subject from its own selfish interests. The capitalist supposes that gain to labor is lost to him, and that he must look to his own interest first, that the cheaper the labor, the larger his gains. Consequently, it is for his interest to keep the price as low as possible. On the contrary, the laborer thinks that he loses what the capitalist gains, and, consequently, that it is for his interest to get as large wages as possible. From these opposite points of view, their interests appear to be directly hostile. What one party gains, the other loses, hence the conflict. Both are acting from selfish motives, and, consequently, must be wrong. Both parties see only half of the truth, and, mistaking that for the whole of it, they fall into a mistake ruinous to both. Each one stands on his own ground, and regards the subject wholly from his point of view and in the misleading light of his own selfishness. Passion inflames the mind and blinds the understanding, and when passion is aroused, men will sacrifice their own interests to injure others, and both will suffer loss. They will wage continual warfare against each other. They will resort to all devices, and take advantage of every necessity to win a victory. Capital tries to starve the laborer into submission, like a beleaguered city, and hunger and one are most powerful weapons. Labor sullenly resists, and tries to destroy the value of capital by rendering it unproductive. If necessity or interest compels a truce, it is a sullen one, and maintained with the purpose of renewing hostilities as soon as there is any prospect of success. Thus laborers and capitalists confront each other like two armed hosts, ready at any time to renew the conflict. It will be renewed, without doubt, and continued with varying success until both parties discover that they are mistaken, that their interests are mutual, and can only be secured to the fullest extent by cooperation and giving to each the reward it deserves. The capitalist and the laborer must clasp hands across the bottomless pit into which so much wealth and work has been cast. How this reconciliation is to be effected is a question that is occupying the minds of many wise and good men on both sides at the present time. Wise and impartial legislation will, no doubt, be an important agent in restraining blind passion and protecting all classes from insatiable greed. And it is the duty of every man to use his best endeavors to secure such legislation both in state and national governments. Organizations of laborers for protecting their own rights and securing a better reward for their labor will have a great influence. That influence will continue to increase as their temper becomes normal and firm, and their demands are based on justice and humanity. Violence and threats will effect no good. Dynamite, whether in the form of explosives or the more destructive force of fierce and reckless passion, will heal no wounds nor subdue any hostile feeling. Arbitration is, doubtless, the wisest and most practicable means now available to bring about amicable relations between these hostile parties and secure justice to both. Giving the laborer a share in the profits of the business has worked well in some cases, but it is attended with great practical difficulties which require more wisdom, self-control, and genuine regard for the common interests of both parties than often can be found. Many devices may have a partial and temporary effect, but no permanent progress can be made in settling this conflict without restraining and finally removing its cause. Its real central cause is an inordinate love of self and the world, and that cause will continue to operate as long as it exists. It may be restrained and moderated, but it will assert itself when occasion offers. Every wise man must, therefore, seek to remove the cause, and as far as he can do it, he will control effects. Purify the fountain, and you make the whole stream pure and wholesome. There is a principle of universal influence that must underlie and guide every successful effort to bring these two great factors of human good which now confront each other with hostile purpose into harmony. It is no invention or discovery of mine. It embodies a higher than human wisdom. It is not difficult to understand or apply. The child can comprehend it and act according to it. It is universal in its application and wholly useful in its effects. It will lighten the burdens of labor and increase its rewards. It will give security to capital and make it more productive. It is simply the golden rule, embodied in these words. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do you even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Before proceeding to apply this principle to the case in hand, let me call your special attention to it. It is a very remarkable law of human life which seems to have been generally overlooked by statesmen, philosophers, and religious teachers. This rule embodies the whole of religion. It comprises all the precepts, commandments, and means of the future triumphs of good over evil, of truth over error, and the peace and happiness of men, foretold in the glorious visions of the prophets. Mark the words. It does not merely say that it is a wise rule, that it accords with the principles of the divine order revealed in the law and the prophets. It embodies them all. It is the law and the prophets. It comprises love to God. It says we should regard him as we desire to have him regard us, that we should do to him as we wish to have him do to us. If we desire to have him love us with all his heart, with all his soul, with all his mind, and with all his strength, we must love him in the same manner. If we desire to have our neighbor love us as he loves himself, we must love him as we love ourselves. Here, then, is the universal and divine law of human service and fellowship. It is not a precept of human wisdom, it bought its origin in the divine nature, and its embodiment in human nature. Now, let us apply it to the conflict between labor and capital. You are a capitalist. Your money is invested in manufactures, in land, in mines, in merchandise, railways, and ships, or you loan it to others on interest. You employ, directly or indirectly, men to use your capital. You cannot come to a just conclusion concerning your rights and duties and privileges by looking wholly at your own gains. The glitter of the silver and gold will exercise so potent a spell over your mind that it will blind you to everything else. You can see no interest but your own. The laborer is not known or regarded as a man who has any interest you are bound to regard. You see him only as your slave, your tool, your means of adding to your wealth. In this light, he is a friend so far as he serves you, an enemy so far as he does not. But change your point of view. Put yourself in his place. Put him in your place. How would you like to have him treat you if you were in his place? Perhaps you have been there. In all probability you have, for the capitalist today was the laborer yesterday, and the laborer today will be the employer tomorrow. You know from lively and painful experience how you would like to be treated. Would you like to be regarded as a mere tool? As a means of enriching another? Would you like to have your wages kept down to the bare necessities of life? Would you like to be regarded with indifference and treated with brutality? Would you like to have your blood, your strength, your soul coined into dollars for the benefit of another? These questions are easy to answer. Everyone knows that he would rejoice to be treated kindly, to have his interests regarded, his rights recognized and protected. Everyone knows that such regard awakens a response in his own heart. Kindness begets kindness. Respect awakens respect. Put yourself in his place. Imagine that you are dealing with yourself, and you will have no difficulty in deciding whether you should give the screw another turn, that you may wring a penny more from the muscles of the worker, or relax its pressure, and, if possible, add something to his wages, and give him respect for his service. Do to him as you would have him do to you in changed conditions. You are a laborer. You receive a certain sum for a day's work. Put yourself in the place of your employer. How would you like to have the men you employed work for you? Would you think it right that they should regard you as their enemy? Would you think it honest in them to slight their work, to do as little and to get as much as possible? If you had a large contract which must be completed at a fixed time or you would suffer great loss, would you like to have your workmen take advantage of your necessity to compel an increase of their wages? Would you think it right and wise in them to interfere with you in the management of your business? To dictate whom you should employ, and on what terms you should employ them? Would you not rather have them do honest work in a kind and good spirit? Would you not be much more disposed to look to their interests, to lighten their labor, to increase their wages when you could afford to do so, and look after the welfare of their families, when you found that they regarded yours? I know that it would be so. It is true that men are selfish, and that some men are so mean and contracted in spirit that they cannot see any interest but their own, whose hearts, not made of flesh but of silver and gold, are so hard that they are not touched by any human feeling, and care not how much others suffer if they can make a cent by it. But they are the exception, not the rule. We are influenced by the regard and devotion of others to our interests. The laborer who knows that his employer feels kindly toward him, desires to treat him justly and to regard as good, will do better work and more of it, and will be disposed to look to his employer's interests as well as his own. I am well aware that many will think this divine and humane law of doing to others as we would have them do to us is impracticable in this selfish and worldly age. If both parties would be governed by it, everyone can see how happy would be the results. But, it will be said, they will not. The laborer will not work unless compelled by want. He will take advantage of every necessity. As soon as he gains a little independence of his employer, he becomes proud, arrogant, and hostile. The employer will seize upon every means to keep the workmen dependent upon him and to make as much out of them as possible. Every inch of ground which labor yields capital will occupy and entrench itself in it, and from its vantage bring the laborer into greater dependence and more abject submission. But this is a mistake. The history of the world testifies that when the minds of men are not embittered by intense hostility and their feelings outraged by cruel wrongs, they are ready to listen to calm, disinterested, and judicious counsel. A man who employed a large number of laborers in mining coal told me that he had never known an instance to fail of a calm and candid response when he had appealed to honorable motives, as a man to man, both of whom acknowledged a common humanity. There is a recent and most notable instance in this city of the happy effect of calm, disinterested and judicious counsel in settling difficulties between employers and workmen that were disastrous to both. When the mind is inflamed by passion, men will not listen to reason. They become blind to their own interests and regardless of the interests of others. Difficulties are never settled while passion rages. They are never settled by conflict. One party may be subdued by power, but the sense of wrong will remain. The fire of passion will slumber ready to break out again on the first occasion. But let the laborer or the capitalist feel assured that the other party has no wish to take any advantage, that there is a sincere desire and determination on both sides to be just and pay due regard to their common interests, and all the conflict between them would cease, as the wild waves of the ocean sink to calm when the winds are at rest. The laborer and the capitalist have a mutual and common interest. Neither can permanently prosper without the prosperity of the other. They are parts of one body. If labor is the arm, capital is the blood. Devitalize or waste the blood, and the arm loses its power. Destroy the arm, and the blood is useless. Let each care for the other, and both are benefited. Let each take the golden rule as a guide, and all cause of hostility will be removed, all conflict will cease, and they will go hand in hand to do their work and reap their just reward. If you have mastered the fundamentals upon which this lesson is based, you understand why it is that no public speaker can move his audience or convince men of his argument unless he, himself, believes that which he is saying. You also understand why no salesman can convince his prospective purchaser unless he has first convinced himself of the merits of his goods. Throughout this entire course, one particular principle has been emphasized for the purpose of illustrating the truth that every personality is the sum total of the individual's thoughts and acts, that we come to resemble the nature of our dominating thoughts. Thought is the only power that can systematically organize, accumulate, and assemble facts and materials according to a definite plan. A flowing river can assemble dirt and build land, and a storm can gather and assemble sticks into a shapeless mass of debris, but neither storms nor river can think. Therefore, the materials which they assemble are not assembled in organized, definite form. Man, alone, has the power to transform his thoughts into physical reality. Man, alone, can dream and make his dreams come true. Man has the power to create ideals and rise to their attainment. How did it happen that man is the only creature on earth that knows how to use the power of thought? It happened because man is the apex of the pyramid of evolution, the product of millions of years of struggle during which man has risen above the other creatures of the earth as the result of his own thoughts and their effects upon himself. Just when, where, and how the first rays of thought began to flow into man's brain no one knows. But we all know that thought is the power which distinguishes man from all other creatures. Likewise, we all know that thought is the power that has enabled man to lift himself above all other creatures. No one knows the limitations of the power of thought, or whether or not it has any limitations. Whatever man believes he can do, he eventually does. But a few generations back, the more imaginative writers dared to write of the horseless carriage, and lo, it became a reality and is now a common vehicle. Through the evolutionary power of thought, the hopes and ambitions of one generation become a reality in the next. The power of thought has been given the dominating position throughout this course, for the reason that it belongs in that position. Man's dominating position in the world is the direct result of thought, and it must be this power that you, as an individual, will use in the attainment of success, no matter what may be your idea of what represents success. You have now arrived at the point at which you should take inventory of yourself for the purpose of ascertaining what qualities you need to give you a well-balanced and rounded-out personality. 15 major factors entered into the building of this course. Analyze yourself carefully, with the assistance of one or more other persons if you feel that you need it, for the purpose of ascertaining in which of the 15 factors of this course you are the weakest. And then concentrate your efforts upon those particular lessons until you have fully developed those factors which they represent. Personal analysis service. As a student of this course, you are entitled to a continuation of the author's services for the purpose of making a complete personal analysis that will indicate your general efficiency and your understanding of the 15 laws of success. To avail yourself of this service, you must fill out the personal analysis questionnaire, which accompanies the course, and mail it to the author at the address shown on the questionnaire. You will, in due time, receive a graphic chart diagram which will show you, at a glance, the percentage to which you are entitled in connection with each of the 15 laws. It will be both interesting and instructive to compare this analysis with the one which you, yourself, have made, through the aid of the chart shown in Lesson 1. The questionnaire should not be filled out until after you have read all the lessons of this course at least once. Answer the questions correctly and frankly, as near as you can. The data contained in your answers will be strictly confidential and will be seen by no one except the author of this philosophy. Your analysis will be in the nature of a signed report, which may be used to great advantage in the marketing of your personal services, if you wish so to use it. This analysis will be the same, in every respect, as those for which the author made a charge of $25 during the years he was engaged in research in connection with the organization of this course, and it may, under some circumstances, be worth many times this amount to you, as similar analyses have been to scores of people whom the author has served. No charge is made for this analysis, as it is a part of the service to which each student of this course is entitled upon completion of the 16 lessons and the payment of the nominal tuition fee charged for the course. Indecision and after the lesson visit with the author time. Procrastination robs you of opportunity. It is a significant fact that no great leader was ever known to procrastinate. You are fortunate if ambition drives you into action, never permitting you to falter or turn back, once you have rendered a decision to go forward. Second by second, as the clock ticks off, the distance time is running a race with you. Delay means defeat, because no man may ever make up a second of lost time. Time is a master worker which heals the wounds of failure and disappointment and rights all wrongs and turns all mistakes into capital, but it favors only those who kill off procrastination and remain in action when decisions are made. Life is a great checkerboard. The player opposite you is time. If you hesitate, you will be wiped off the board. If you keep moving, you may win. The only real capital is time, but it is capital only when used. You may be shocked if you keep accurate account of the time you waste in a single day. Take a look at the picture above if you wish to know the fate of all who play carelessly with time. The picture at top of previous page tells a true story of one of the chief causes of failure. One of the players is time, and the other is Mr. Average Man. Let us call him you. Move by move, time has wiped off Mr. Average Man's men until he is finally cornered, where time will get him, no matter which way he moves. Indecision has driven him into the corner. Ask any well-informed salesman, and he will tell you that indecision is the outstanding weakness of the majority of people. Every salesman is familiar with that time-worn alibi, "I will think it over," which is the last trench line of defense of those who have not the courage to say either yes or no. Like the player in the picture above, they cannot decide which way to move. Meanwhile, time forces them into a corner where they can't move. The great leaders of the world were men and women of quick decision. General Grant had but little to commend him as an able general except the quality of firm decision, but this was sufficient to offset all of his weaknesses. The whole story of his military success may be gathered from his reply to his critics when he said, "We will fight it out along these lines if it takes all summer." When Napoleon reached a decision to move his armies in a given direction, he permitted nothing to cause him to change that decision. If his line of march brought his soldiers to a ditch, dug by his opponents to stop him, he would give the order to charge the ditch until it had been filled with dead men and horses sufficient to bridge it. The suspense of indecision drives millions of people to failure. A condemned man once said that the thought of his approaching execution was not so terrifying, once he had reached the decision in his own mind to accept the inevitable. Lack of decision is the chief stumbling block of all revival meeting workers. Their entire work is to get men and women to reach a decision in their own minds to accept a given religious tenet. Billy Sunday once said, "Indecision is the devil's favorite tool." Andrew Carnegie visualized a great steel industry, but that industry would not be what it is today had he not reached a decision in his own mind to transform his vision into reality. James J. Hill saw, in his mind's eye, a great transcontinental railway system, but that railroad never would have become a reality had he not reached a decision to start the project. Imagination, alone, is not enough to ensure success. Millions of people have imagination and build plans that would easily bring them both fame and fortune, but those plans never reach the decision stage. Samuel N. Still was an ordinary stenographer in the employ of Thomas A. Edison. Through the aid of his imagination, he saw the great commercial possibilities of electricity. But he did more than see the possibilities. He reached a decision to transform the mere possibilities into realities, and today he is a multimillionaire electric light plant operator. Demosthenes was a poor Greek lad who had a strong desire to be a great public speaker. Nothing unusual about that. Others have desired this and similar ability without living to see their desires realized. But Demosthenes added decision to desire, and, despite the fact that he was a stammerer, he mastered this handicap and made himself one of the great orators of the world. Martin W. Littleton was a poor lad who never saw the inside of a schoolhouse until he was past 12 years of age. His father took him to hear a great lawyer defend a murderer in one of the southern cities. The speech made such a profound impression on the lad's mind that he grabbed his father by the hand and said, "Father, one of these days I am going to become the ablest lawyer in America." That was a definite decision. Today, Martin W. Littleton accepts no fee under $50,000, and it is said that he is kept busy all the time. He became an able lawyer because he reached a decision to do so. Edwin C. Barnes reached a decision in his own mind to become the partner of Thomas A. Edison. Handicapped by lack of schooling, without money to pay his railroad fare, and with no influential friends to introduce him to Mr. Edison, young Barnes made his way to East Orange on a freight car and so thoroughly sold himself to Mr. Edison that he got his opportunity, which led to a partnership. Today, just 20 years since that decision was reached, Mr. Barnes lives at Bradenton, Florida, retired, with all the money he needs. Men of decision usually get all that they go after. Well, within the memory of this writer, a little group of men met at Westerville, Ohio, and organized what they called the Anti-Saloon League. Saloon men treated them as a joke. People, generally, made fun of them. But they had reached a decision. That decision was so pronounced that it finally drove the powerful saloon men into the corner. William Wrigley, Jr., reached a decision to devote his entire business career to the manufacture and sale of a 5-cent package of chewing gum. He has made that decision bring him financial returns running into millions of dollars a year. Henry Ford reached a decision to manufacture and sell a popular-priced automobile that would be within the means of all who wished to own it. That decision has made Ford the most powerful man on earth and brought travel opportunity to millions of people. All these men had two outstanding qualities: a definite purpose and a firm decision to transform that purpose into reality. The man of decision gets that which he goes after, no matter how long it takes or how difficult the task. An able salesman wanted to meet a Cleveland banker. The banker would not see him. One morning, the salesman waited near the banker's house until he saw him get into his automobile and start downtown. Watching his opportunity, the salesman drove his own automobile into the banker's, causing slight damage to the automobile. Alighting from his own car, he handed the banker his card, expressed regret on account of the damage done, but promised the banker a new car exactly like the one that had been damaged. That afternoon, a new car was delivered to the banker, and out of that transaction grew a friendship that terminated, finally, in a business partnership which still exists. The man of decision cannot be stopped. The man of indecision cannot be started. Take your own choice. Behind him lay the gray Azores, behind the gates of Hercules. Before him not the ghosts of shores, before him only shoreless seas. The good mate said, "Now must we pray, for lo, the very stars are gone." Brave Eddie Marrel, speak. What shall I say? Why say, sail on and on? When Columbus began his famous voyage, he made one of the most far-reaching decisions in the history of mankind. Had he not remained firm on that decision, the freedom of America, as we know it today, would never have been known. Take notice of those about you and observe this significant fact, that the successful men and women are those who reach decisions quickly and then stand firmly by those decisions after they are made. If you are one of those who make up their minds today and change them again tomorrow, you are doomed to failure. If you are not sure which way to move, it is better to shut your eyes and move in the dark than to remain still and make no move at all. The world will forgive you if you make mistakes, but it will never forgive you if you make no decisions, because it will never hear of you. Outside of the community in which you live, no matter who you are or what may be your life work, you are playing checkers with time. It is always your next move. Move with quick decision and time will favor you. Stand still and time will wipe you off the board. You cannot always make the right move, but if you make enough moves, you may take advantage of the law of averages and pile up a creditable score before the great game of life is ended.